Albert assumed the regnal name, George VI, to emphasize continuity with his father and restore confidence in the monarchy. The beginning of George VI's reign was taken up by questions surrounding his predecessor and brother, whose titles, style and position were uncertain. He had been introduced as His Royal Highness Prince Edward for the abdication broadcast. But George VI felt that by abdicating and renouncing the succession, Edward had lost the right to bear royal titles, including Royal Highness. In settling the issue, George's first act as king was to confer upon his brother the title, Duke of Windsor, with the style, Royal Highness. But the letters patent creating the dukedom prevented any wife or children from bearing royal styles. George VI was forced to buy from Edward the royal residences of Balmoral Castle and Sandringham House, as these were private properties and did not pass to him automatically. 3 days after his accession, on his 41st birthday, he invested his wife, the new Queen Consort, with the Order of the Garter. George VI's coronation at Westminster Abbey took place on 12 May 1937. The date previously intended for Edward's coronation. In a break with tradition, his mother Queen Mary attended the ceremony in a show of support for her son. There was no Durbar held in Delhi for George VI, as had occurred for his father, as the cost would have been a burden to the government of India. Rising Indian nationalism made the welcome that the royal party would have received likely to be muted at best, and a prolonged absence from Britain would have been undesirable in the tense period before the Second World War. 2 overseas tours were undertaken, to France and to North America, both of which promised greater strategic advantages in the event of war. The growing likelihood of war in Europe dominated the early reign of George VI. The king was constitutionally bound to support British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain's appeasement of Hitler. When the king and queen greeted Chamberlain on his return from negotiating the Munich Agreement in 1938, they invited him to appear on the balcony of Buckingham Palace with them. This public association of the monarchy with a politician was exceptional, as balcony appearances were traditionally restricted to the royal family. While broadly popular among the general public, Chamberlain's policy towards Hitler was the subject of some opposition in the House of Commons, which led historian John Grigg to describe George's behavior in associating himself so prominently with a politician as the most unconstitutional act by a British sovereign in the present century. In May and June 1939, the King and Queen toured Canada and the United States. It was the first visit of a reigning British monarch to North America, although George had been to Canada prior to his accession. From Ottawa, George and Elizabeth were accompanied by Canadian Prime Minister Mackenzie King, to present themselves in North America as King and Queen of Canada. Both Mackenzie King and the Canadian Governor-General, Lord Tweedsmuir, hoped that George's presence in Canada would demonstrate the principles of the Statute of Westminster 1931, which gave full sovereignty to the British dominions. On 19 May, George personally accepted and approved the letter of credence of the new U.S. ambassador to Canada, Daniel Calhoun Roper, gave royal assent to 9 parliamentary bills, and ratified 2 international treaties with the Great Seal of Canada. The official royal tour historian, Gustave Langto, wrote, "The Statute of Westminster had assumed full reality, and George gave a speech emphasizing the free and equal association of the nations of the Commonwealth." The trip was intended to soften the strong isolationist tendencies among the North American public. with regard to the developing tensions in Europe. Although the aim of the tour was mainly political, to shore up Atlantic support for the United Kingdom in any future war. The King and Queen were enthusiastically received by the public. The fear that George would be compared unfavorably to his predecessor was dispelled. They visited the 1939 New York World's Fair and stayed with President Franklin D. Roosevelt at the White House and at his private estate at Hyde Park, New York. A strong bond of friendship was forged between Roosevelt and the royal couple during the tour, which had major significance in the relations between the United States and the United Kingdom. Through the ensuing war years,